Good morning. The survivors. I noticed the parking lot wasn't quite as full this morning. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, what was the other conference? Medical something or other? Or
Veterinary.
Vets? Ah, yeah. My daughter wants to do. Well, as you guys may have guessed, I'm John DeTroye, formerly with Apple, now with FileWave for 5 weeks. It is an interesting transition. I spent 25 years at Apple doing systems management stuff in the business market and the education market. And last April, I got recruited by FileWave and said, hey, come and travel all over the world and tell people about our stuff and help us do things that are cool. And I said, okay. And so I'm joined here today by Dave Tutton. He's our director for sales for FileWave USA. And if you have any hard questions, ask Dave. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go through a little bit about deployment and how it relates to everything that everybody's doing in their infrastructure. We're going to talk a little bit about systems management and how that applies to what we're doing at FileWave. And we're going to compare all that stuff, and then I'll have a goodly sized Q&A session at the end, so that way nobody has to worry about me running up to the last minute. The last thing I do is on a 75-minute presentation, when they say you got a 75-minute block, I usually plan for about 35 to 40 minutes of discussion or of presentation and about 30 minutes of open time. So nobody's going to be itching to not get their questions out before the end. So I found this a few years ago, and I thought, this is what everybody thinks of when IT says it's so hard to get everything managed and so everything keep the infrastructure up and running. And this is management's view of what we have to deal with. How hard can it be to do wireless, right? There's no wires to deal with. And how many of you think that whoever did the wireless for this building needs to be fired, needs to be lectured on the difference between coverage and capacity? Well, from an educational perspective, it really comes down to a couple things. And, managing an infrastructure for you guys comes down to trying to keep track of, it's like herding cats. You've heard that many times. But if you think about it, it really comes down to dollars and cents. Trying to do the most effective thing you can with the least amount of funds, and yet don't waste any money when, whatever you get out there. And learning minutes is a maximizing thing. This is a study we actually did at Apple several years ago. And this was for a K-12 district, a rather sizable K-12 district. And using Department of Education and census data, one of the smart guys worked out the fact that he said there's about 54,000 teaching minutes in a year. And the average salary for a teacher across the entire country is about $54K a year. So they said it was about $1 a minute. So consequently, every time a teacher or a faculty member is not engaged in teaching, it's costing the school a buck. And you look at this and you say, okay, what does this have to do with anything? Well, the interesting survey they did was they asked this one school district, they said, how long does it take the average teacher to get started doing a class because of any technological issues? Logging in, starting stuff up, getting the projector up and running and everything. And in this one school district, it was 7 minutes. And the guys came back and said, you realize that's $7 down the drain. And they said, well, okay, $7. Well, the issue here was, it was the New York City DOE. And when you look at $7 per teacher, 7 periods a day, they have 500,000 teachers. And when they told the superintendent, it's costing you $35 million a day in funds to have that 7-minute delay, he sat up and, all the blood drained out of his head. He went, whoa. So think about it this way. When you introduce things into the infrastructure and you say, here's what you have to do in order to do your teaching or learning, for every minute that that the faculty isn't teaching and every minute the student isn't learning during a class period, that's costing $1. So when somebody starts telling you, when you start telling people we need more efficient wiring, we need better login capability, we need faster networking, you can just use this and say, hey, according to the U.S. Census data and the Department of Education, it costs $1 for every minute we're wasting. If that isn't a way to get your budget organized with people, that's the best I can do to help you along. Right? But use the argument. This is the deployment life cycle. You can't escape this. All of us have lived this. Right? You spend the whole year waiting for that magic moment, especially in education. In the business world, they do it every 3 or 4 weeks on a smaller scale. But think about it in schools. Everybody's looking forward to this summer when you image and deploy your systems. Then you have to manage them and maintain them for the rest of the year. And it's a constant cycle. Nobody can say, we're just not going to do it. Right? Never works. I have been to schools. Columbia over in New York actually said that they were on a 18-week cycle. Every 18 weeks or 16 weeks, they re-imaged all their machines. I don't know why. Probably it was just because they could. But at the same time, there's a large school district outside of Toronto where they tried to do it every 4 years. Now think about 4 years ago, what operating systems were running, what the applications were. Imagine a 4-year leap in technology. Now, which would be a bigger hassle, doing it every year incrementally or waiting 4 years and hitting the tsunami of doing it all at once? So, the deployment models have become really simple. Deployment models have become a very, very lockstep environment. There are 2 primary deployment models. At one end, we have the institutional model. You set up a system, has an admin account on it, it has applications on it, and it has a lockdown set of settings so that a bunch of people can come in and touch this system. At the other end of the spectrum is the owner-admin one-to-one. It's the one you guys are experiencing right now. You're sitting there in front of your own systems as the admins of your own laptops. Both of those, they're extreme ends of a big bell curve of deployment. And everything in the middle of that is basically some compromise off of either end of the deployment model. And once you get that and you realize that you have this kind of model environment, then, it makes it easier to shape your deployments. Consistent user experience is the institutional model. What you want there is all the different people that come in and touch these systems from time to time have to have the same experience. That's the open lab. That's the cart where it's moved up and down the hallway. It's the devices that are touched by so many different users. At the other end of it is the personal ownership model or the BYOD. They're both the exact same thing. Whoever has the device is the owner of the device. They use and do what they need to do. And your biggest thing there is to mentor them, make sure they do the best they can with it, and so forth and so on. It's just like, keeping all the stuff that you've got loaded on your machine to get your job done. Okay? In between that, everything else is layered. And these are all the reasons it's layered. I would put this one at the top and followed by this because they both start with the same letters, but that drives almost everything else. Oh, we have a policy that's such and such. We have, politically we can't do this or whatever. We got to compromise somehow. And in some cases it's funding. We can't give everybody their own system. Right? And that uncertainty of, well, what if they, I hear that a lot. What if they, and then some, what if they walk outside and get hit by a meteorite and their laptop gets lost? Or whatever. But some reason why you can't do one end of those models, and these are all recognizable. These are all things you got to deal with. So you just kind of go with the flow, right? Well, the key there is you have to have a good systems management environment in order to keep this working. This is the definition from Wikipedia of systems management. And for you guys, realistically, take out the word enterprise and say education-wide. Because for anybody that says, I've got an enterprise environment, the reality is education is 10 times harder to manage than any enterprise out there. I'll give you an example. I came from Apple, 72,000 users, all admins of their own systems. IS&T doesn't control a single system that belongs to any Apple employee. They just use their systems. They call the IT guys if they have a problem, but the IT guys don't have to run and fix it. Now, it's true we have salespeople. You know, we had salespeople and we had, you know, managers and stuff and we had salespeople who were managers who had to have somebody babysit them, but even so. And at FileWave, you know, everybody has their own systems and nobody's managing anybody else's systems for them. That's enterprise, right? But in education, you've got third graders, you've got college freshmen, you've got kindergartners, and so far those are all like kind of philosophically the same people. And you've got faculty members, and you've got, you know, you got, yeah, also in some cases, right. But at the same time, you know, I mean, where do you guys stand in this? You know, where's the IT department stand in all of this stuff? You know, what's the impression of, I was talking to a guy at University of California down in Santa Barbara, and he said he gave up on trying to manage the faculty machines when he had 3 Nobel laureates who were all astrophysicists who were all had Einstein grants told him, no, you're not smarter than me. Quit telling me I can't manage my own computer. You know, but at the same time, yes, we do have people that if you let them manage their own computer, you'd spend every single day in their office fixing it. It's just the way things go, right? So systems management, what is it? This is the essential task list. There's more tasks to this. There's probably 20 or 30 systems management tasks. But think about these are the things that you guys have to do on a regular basis all the time. Asset management, you got to track the stuff. You got to know what the institution purchased, where it is, what its capabilities are, you know, how much hard drive space, what version of the operating system, so forth and so on. License management, you got to know what legal software you have and you got to keep it legal. Pretty straightforward. Client management is that role of if you have a machine that has to be managed, like a CART system or an open lab system, you've got to manage that system. If you have systems that where you're the admin and the other users aren't, that's the putting client management stuff in place on those machines to keep them running properly. Mobile device management, I broke that out only because realistically MDM is a tiny subset of client management because all it means is mobile device management means client management for mobile devices. It's that profiles and all the settings and management on tablets and smartphones and so forth and so on. And I broke it out because a lot of people today say, well, do you have an MDM solution? Well, yeah, we do client management. Right? Now, the companies that only do MDM, that's a different thing. Oh, we only manage smartphones and tablets. Well, that's, you know, okay, good for you. Imaging. The best experience you can have during the summer. You know, I've got 6,000 systems and I have to make them all 10.8.3 or I have to make them all Windows 8 or I have to make them all, you know, whatever for the summer so that they can get ready to go. And then as soon as I do that, we run into software distribution. Because software distribution is, I just finished imaging 6,000 systems, and somebody came up and said, these 17 machines need this piece of software, those 81 machines need that piece of software, and so forth and so on. And that goes on all year long. Somebody comes in and says, oh, quick, Monday, I'm teaching a class and I need this piece of software on the machines in the lab. And, you know, you deal with it, right? Patching and upgrading, can't escape it. Oh, there's a new Java patch out. Right. And helpdesk management, right? The whole getting reports, knowing what's going on, hearing back from people about, you know, the systems, being able to answer questions, that kind of stuff. So that's systems management. Now, Before I get into it deep, I got to do the brief, I work for FileWave thing. Who are we? Well, we're the guys that just released FileWave version 6. It's the newest version of our software. The company itself has been around for over 20 years and is essentially worldwide in reach right now. The primary U.S. office is north of Indianapolis. The primary European office is just outside of Zurich. And I am so looking forward to an office visit. There's engineers. We have development engineers in San Francisco and in London. And so the company's been around quite a while. It's not one of these, oh, hey, look, we just entered the market. So pretty cool, solid base here. Been around for a while doing cool things. Pretty good customer base. Lego.
Husky is neat.
Ah, look at that. I can't read you.
University, but that's pretty blurry.
Yeah, I can't read the icons. I had, in fact, actually, I probably need you to send me better graphics. I went to the sites and I was looking for their media kits. The best one I ran to was UCSF. I got to their site and their media kit. They have 72 versions of this in different colors and shapes and shading, and I went, really? That? But OtterBox, Lego, the BBC, HBO, IKEA, that little tiny wrench company. They make the little steel wrenches and then they sell furniture to go with it. Indianapolis Public Schools, Land's End, and so forth and so on. K-12 schools, Mooresville, down in Owensboro out in Kentucky. Yeah, there's a copy of this, by the way, waiting for you guys. So, yeah. Unlike being at Apple where they couldn't record any of my presentations, they get to record this one. This is cool. So that's who we are. And the question is, why FileWave? What does this have to do with what you guys need to do? Well, 4 primary things. First off, we use a technology called FileSet. The FileSet technology means that instead of having to package stuff up, instead of having to create DMGs, instead of having to do all sorts of fancy work with it, we have a technology that we patented to be able to do deployments based on files. You can actually take files with the permissions intact, with all the bits and pieces intact, and you can send those out to people. The other piece of it is the cross-platform model. Because a lot of cases, you don't want to change your back-end infrastructure just to manage some new machines you're bringing in. So if you're an all-Mac school and you're bringing in some PCs to do a project, or if you're an all-PC school and you're bringing in Macs or iOS devices to do a project, the applications and the stuff we do are pretty straightforward there. We have directory integration across the board and something called booster technology. So the Filesets, we do file-level distribution, which means when you need to get a package out to somebody, okay, and I'm still stuck in the mindset of we still talk about packages going out. But if you need to get a file out to somebody, if you need to get a document, if you need to get a new version of an application, sending it out as a file set means you can break things down, and the file set could consist of a profile that goes to somebody, it can consist of a font file that goes to somebody, it could be anything. But there's no extra stuff that you got to wrap around it in order to get it out there. It just, the binary takes care of it and transmits it. Very low network overhead, and a timer where you can say, for instance, I got a class coming up and these guys need to run this piece of software. So you can create a file set, send that piece of software out to them and say, activate this Monday morning at 7 a.m. And then Monday afternoon at 5 p.m. deactivate it. And literally the software will appear, let them use it all day long, and at 5 p.m. it's gone. They don't have it anymore. Okay, very handy. Plus you could set it so that it shows up later, and say, hey, if you've got people with labs and they're in heavy use all day long, you could say, don't install this until 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning and make sure it's done. So you can essentially set and forget, or fire and forget, as we used to say in the Army, and let it happen. The cross-platform bit is, I know a lot of the vendors are into doing web-based admin tools. The tools we wrote are completely native. We have a solid Windows tool for doing Windows to be an admin from the Windows perspective. We have a solid OS 10 tool for doing admin from the OS 10 perspective. The only tool we have that is HTML based is our self-service tool. Okay. The server application is native to whichever platform. We support, right now we support running it on OS 10 servers, on Windows servers, on Linux servers. It's entirely your call. And the client tools, the client binaries are all native too. The directory integration, literally everything. It's LDAP related, OD, whatever you want to attach yourself to. And one of the things that we haven't documented really well yet that I'm working on is we have an API that you can download from our site, and you can use it to integrate with any of the big iron tools like SCCM or any of the other large scale management databases that are out there. So you can just basically pull all the data from those guys and just integrate it right into your setup. The booster technology is really cool because think of it, the software update server concept. So imagine you've got a campus that's spread out over several states and you need to do management for them, or even just a large K-12 district. And what you can do is you can put a booster that holds all the file sets that are needed in that area on site, and just a small box. You can just put just a small system, in terms of an Apple perspective, you stick a Mac Mini out there and just run the booster on it, and all it does is it acts as a caching server for the file sets. All the file sets that get requested just sit there and wait for the guys so that you don't have to worry about all the traffic heading over the wide area network. So FileWave actually has the ability to support all of this, and let's dig into the bits and pieces from an asset management point of view, keeping track of your stuff, knowing what everybody's up to. Very scalable. We use Postgres, SQL, and you can basically scale that, as large as the hardware you could put it on. The RESTful API I was talking about for database integration with SCCM. The queries are real time, so if you create a query and say, I need to know such and such information, I need to know how many people are running out of disk space, or I need to know who's running what version of what OS, you set up a query and you get answers back immediately from the binaries. You can build some really cool custom searches, drag and drop search setup, and you can export any of the reports in the simple, everything exports to, the way it used to read is everything exports to Excel, but there are people using numbers and other stuff out there, so it is actually tab delimited exports. And to give you an idea of what it looks like, here's an idea of the query builder. You just basically drag the fields over and say, okay, I'm building a query, and I say the application contains Acrobat Pro and the OS is OS 10. Now show me everybody who's got Acrobat Pro with OS 10. And you can start dragging the fields around in the query result, and you can just move the fields around up here and say, okay, I'm going to reorganize this and see who's got what. And as you build this, you get answers right back from the systems. Okay. And here's a detailed look at one specific machine. And the thing you'll notice here is it doesn't make any difference what you run for your admin tool. They all behave exactly the same. The only difference is what the edges of the windows look like, because all the tabs, all the controls and everything else are identical regardless of which platform you're on. So you can show what's running there, what's installed, what isn't installed, if there's a file set waiting for you to go up, and so forth. License management, keeping it legal. As I said, you get 50 licenses, you don't want to have somebody come down and say, how come we did an audit and we found out there were 75 people using this software on your campus. You can keep track of that. You can get alerts for it. You can very easily. How many of you have no problems dealing with VPP? See, nobody ever raises their hand when I say if it's that ask the question properly, because if you have no problems running VPP, right? The idea here is that, for instance, from a license management point of view, you can go in here and you can say, I'm plugging in and tracking licenses for Acrobat Pro, and I've got 420 licenses, but I've got 410 out there. It actually gives you a warning, and it says you are hitting this watermark or this trigger where you're within 10 licenses or of running out of licenses. And you get the alert and it'll tell you, hey, it's time to get some more licenses for Acrobat Pro, right? So that kind of inventory capability plugged into the license side is pretty handy. VPP, the spreadsheets. Everybody's had fun dealing with the spreadsheets. I had this one tech up in Canada. She sent me a picture of a notebook they put together that was 720 pages long, tabbed and everything, and marked for each and every building in the district with every single one of their VPP codes. And I said, "How are you having fun with that?" And I got a picture back of an entire stack of Stella bottles over in the corner. I mean, it was a big stack. But the idea here is you can take the spreadsheet codes and you can literally drag and drop them into the license management window, so you can create a group set of licenses for different areas. And you can say, okay, this building or this lab is getting X number of VPP codes for this software, and you just drag the codes into the window on the tool, and you've got your licenses that you can track. And from a client management point of view, you got to be able to manage your stuff when somebody other than you or somebody other than the owner or user of the system is the constant, companion of that device. The shared lab, the cart, in a lot of cases even one-to-ones where you say we're going to maintain, this control. The other part of this is from shaping the user experience. If you look at it and you think of kind of the carrot and stick thing, okay? How many of you are dealing with BYODs and trying to figure out, you really want to kind of keep track of what's going on, but there's that resistance to, you're not going to control my machine, right? Everybody's run into that. I know that one of my kids went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, and what they did was they had everybody register their devices, and they put a asset tag, actually had a little RFID chip in it. They put an asset tag on the back of the machine, and they registered the MAC address, and that was pretty much all they could do. Well, what some sites are doing is they're saying, if you need access to resources on the network, you need to download this profile. And if you download this profile, then you can set it up where they get the profile that gives them access to this secure network area. Like it could be VPN, right, with the secret key, or it could be, however you want to set that up. But it's a carrot of, if you want this service, you need this profile. They put the profile on board, and then you can at least track what their system is up to. Okay? You can keep track of which version of the OS, what applications they're running, and so forth and so on. It's not literally, you're not doing screen sharing, you're not doing anything else, but you at least know what the machine has on board. From a managed machine point of view, any of the directories you can integrate with, so you can pull the computer groups and stuff over, and you can keep track of all the different devices based on the groups that you want to set up. Plus you plug in with the tiered administration, you can say this department is capable of managing this lab, so somebody down in that department could be running the admin program and just managing just what happens in that one cluster of machines, and it won't affect everybody else. So we support full tiered administration. And you can use as I was telling you earlier, you can use the Filesets to activate and deactivate software. So if you got somebody that says, we own 50 copies of such and such a piece of software, and we can't let everybody use it, but we're going to let it go in this lab for today, and tomorrow these guys need it. You could activate and deactivate the software in those different labs from day to day, and stay legal, which is kind of a cool concept. And the profile editor, we're using the profile editor interface because that's where everybody's headed. But the cool part about it is that if you have, for instance, if you're using Snow Leopard machines, they only support the standard MCX settings. But if you set up the MCX settings, for instance, for Energy Saver or for network access or whatever in Profile Editor on FileWave Admin, if the machine is not capable of handling profiles, what it'll do is just send them the standard MCXP lists, just as if they were hooked up to Workgroup Manager. And the way this looks, if you go in here and you start tracking some of the machines, here's the ability, here's all the different machines and the software tracking what they've got loaded on board. So here's a bunch of different versions of applications that can be provided. These are all just different client management file sets. And you can go in and set restrictions on the systems, and you can notice it just looks like Profile Manager. Now the cool part here is this is completely extensible. I know because I helped work on it when I was at Apple, is that there's a custom setting so that you can extend this, and that's something we're doing, is adding additional settings to this based on people's needs, and say, you know, if you need something like iTunes management, we plug in iTunes management to this. You know, it's not that hard to do, and so we have the ability to make, you know, stuff like that happen. Mobile device management, same thing. Difference here is that you've got iOS devices. We also support, for instance, the x86 version of the Windows 8 Surface tablet. We are really seriously moving and almost coming to fruition with our Android support. So we're working on that really hard. And the idea here is, this is that definitely the carrot stick thing. You know, I mean, if you look at it right now from a network planning point of view, how many of you heard the 2.5 rule? Whenever you plan for a network, take the total number of bodies that could ever be in a room and multiply by 2.5 and say, that's the number of IP addresses I need. Obviously, whoever did the network for this building didn't follow that rule. I think he followed the 0.5 rule. Okay. Yeah, I was amazed this morning. I plugged in, they gave me a hard wire connection. I went, oh, wow, I'm really fast on the network. And then I looked up and I saw my Wi-Fi was turned off, and I went, oh, that's why. Oh, well. But the idea with the mobile device management, same thing. And one of the stick parts of this that's kind of interesting, this is something that you can do from a profile perspective, and realistically, this does blend back into the client management side. You can take a profile and you can say, you know, we really, really, really need to keep track of the operating system and the versions of the apps you're running on your machines, you know, even your own systems when you bring them into school, so that we don't run into conflicts where people say, hey, I did something on, you know, I created something and it's not compatible with the presentation system we have in the auditorium or whatever. We just want to keep track of, you know, just basic usage stats and stuff. And the carrot is, you can get access to VPN, you can get access to the secure network areas, you can do all this other cool stuff. And we will give you these applications. And here's some applications that are bought by the school that you can use. If they take the profile, they get these applications and stuff. It's part of the file set. If they remove the profile, the applications go, and they're gone. Oops. I got so excited I squeezed my remote. So that's a very interesting approach to this. Say, you know, you don't have to. You can just come on the campus and you can use the guest network. The other thing that we're also doing that I haven't added into this yet, is we have an alliance with Ruckus, and they actually have the ability for us to do a setup with them where they have a portal where the instant you click through the portal, it puts the FileWave binary on your system. Okay, for a Windows machine or for a Mac, and from an iOS perspective, once it registers, then what it does is it starts doing the whole file set thing with your iOS devices and keeps track of those and puts the profiles in place and so forth and so on, so that you can manage everything from that perspective. It's kind of a little sneaky, oh yeah, I said yes to the AT&T network, and now I got to go look at my profile systems preference to see what got added to my machine in the process. How many of you are going to jump into systems preferences right now and see if you got a profile added when you joined the network here? Because you said okay. And did you read all the small print?
Can you really do that without asking for a password?
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey, you know, you think it's a conspiracy? Yes. Yes. So, mobile device management, here's an example of some of the this is the standard restrictions and stuff that can be provided. I wish the screens were clearer for this, but this is the, 1080, 1024 by 768 model. And then here's looking at a detail for a system where we have a link, and the other part of the MDM thing is to be able to send profiles out to machines that allow you to link to an application. So in this case, we've got an application that says, okay, this is numbers going onto a machine, and when the MDM profile is removed, it says remove the app. So that's one of the settings you do as for the file set for that application. You say, you join us, you get this profile that gives you this file set, and when you remove the profile, you lose the application. Imaging, the key here is, I've noticed, I've worked on imaging for so long, I go all the way back to the days when we were using Network Assistant to clone Mac OS 8 machines in a lab. Okay, I remember doing that kind of stuff. I remember teaching Mike Bombick what netboot meant. That's how far back I go. And the fun part is, if you look at the network and imaging model, there are really two primary ways to image systems in terms of the raw level. You do a bare metal image where you completely wipe the machine and put every single thing back on it, or you do a layered modeling thing. Now, at Apple, I didn't talk about the layered modeling thing because there were no tools at Apple that support it. But the reality is that wouldn't it be better, instead of saying, I've got to erase these machines and put a brand new operating system on them, which already exists, or I've got to put just the applications, the settings, the profiles, and the bits on the machine that it needs to be unique in my area for this group of people or for this building or this department. Which one is faster? And best of all, invariably, and it used to be a joke. Now it's something I actually have to deal with on a regular basis. We used to joke about it when I worked at Apple, was as soon as you get your image done, Apple starts a 10-day countdown and then they release new hardware. Right? And it comes out with a version of the operating system that is incompatible with whatever you built 10 days earlier. Absolutely will not work. The answer to the question of, can I put my image on the new hardware that shipped, will always be no. But from a Windows perspective, from a Mac perspective, isn't it much easier if you can just build a layer that just plops right on top of a machine out of the box from the factory and say, now it's unique to us. And that's the idea. We support both of those. Using the FileSet technology, you can build a group of file sets, associate that to groups of machines, and say, here are all the parts you need to make this machine unique for this group, for this faculty member, for this student, for this department, for this cart, or whatever you want. Okay? And every single time that machine, every time you have a change to that, if you want to upgrade the operating system, if you get 10.8.4 comes out, for instance, all you do is take the 10.8.4 updater off the Apple support site, plop it into that file set, and boom, it goes out to all the machines and gets applied. That is a layered approach to it. And the best part is that then a couple weeks after that, if you get a new pallet of brand new MacBook Airs in or new iMacs or whatever in, all you do is just associate them to that file set, and they get that set of software. And you don't have to worry about re-imaging. That's a cool thing. At the speed test point of view is the Lightning product. You can actually go to FileWave's site, download this, and play with it all you want. It is a direct imaging tool. It was designed around Thunderbolt, but it works with USB, FireWire, whatever you got. But the cool part here is somebody did a session here. Anybody attend the session on how to quickly image 200 machines? And they talked about, Deploy Studio and all the management and all that. Okay, how long did they say it would take to set up the environment to do the imaging? I'll give you a challenge. You take 4 LaCie SSD Thunderbolt drives. You get 4 kids with all the root beer and pizza they can handle, and you sit them down and start shunting boxes in front of them. And using Lightning, they can image 200 machines in the time it takes you to set up the network that you're going to use to image 200 machines. That's how fast Thunderbolt is. If you heard the discussion yesterday, one of the guys was talking about the fact that the fastest he's seen Thunderbolt image a machine is 17 seconds. He's not kidding. I've imaged machines using Thunderbolt that they have the OS, they have iLife, iWork, Microsoft Office, Comic Life, half a dozen other things in it. And it took literally 47 seconds from start to finish to put every single thing on that machine, including verifying it and putting a recovery HD back. 47 seconds. Okay? That's what Lightning can do. So from an imaging perspective, you can take all these different file sets, either Windows, Mac, doesn't make any difference, build stuff together. If you've got books, if you've got documents, if you've got folders full of stuff, if you've got a template for an iPhoto library that has to go on every machine, so everybody's got a default iPhoto library when they start up, all that stuff can be built in to your layer, to your file set kit. And you associate the machines and say, okay, here's a system, and it's got all of these different pieces associated with it, and says, I'm going to go ahead and as soon as that machine, any changes I make here will affect that system immediately. You know, I just go ahead and pull a bunch of things together and say, I'm changing profiles, I want to add an admin user, I want to remove an admin user, I want to, whatever I want to do, I can make that happen. And once again, one of the other things, the universal Band-Aid or universal super glue for any of this is, if you can write a script, you can add it to a file set. So if you got custom stuff you want to do, just throw it in there and make it part of the file set. Lightning, in this case, you drag the OS 10 app, the installer app, into the top window, add all the junk, and you can add applications themselves, you can add packages that you've got that are already built, doesn't matter. You just throw that stuff together and say, okay, create, and I've got an admin account in here. It says disable welcome screen. What that basically means is I'm adding a local admin here, so just bypass the whole setup assistant. The machine is set up. It's ready to go. Okay? So you can do that. Or if you're doing a one-to-one deployment and everybody's going to get their machine and start it up with the welcome screen and run through the setup assistant, you just leave this blank. If you want to add another account to this, like a generic student account or something for somebody, just plug that in also. Okay. Software distribution. It's that whole bit of after the fact I need to distribute software. Two primary mechanisms for that. You do it or you let them do it. You do it or the user does it. We support both. And the idea behind this is you can schedule the software deployment. You can say, I've got software that has to go out to this set of machines. It's going to go out at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I just set it and let it go. Or 8 o'clock tonight or whatever. I got software that has to go out right now. I can go ahead and activate it immediately and just slide it right onto every single machine that's active on the network. And if the machine isn't active on the network and I send it out and that machine's in the file set, when the machine becomes active on the network, it'll notice that there is a file set that is active for it right now. It will immediately apply it. Okay? So the system will become aware. The other thing I can do is I can run it with the kiosk, the self-service kiosk. And what that is essentially a do-it-yourself tool. And you can say, well, we bought this software, but it's not part of the common image. Okay, it's not part of that set that goes on every machine, but we have licenses for it, so if you want a copy of it, you can go ahead and come and get it. We bought a site license for Comic Life, one of the best technical writing tools out there. I kid you not, because how many of you send messages out to your users on how to do stuff on a regular basis? How many of your users read those? Get Comic Life. Make it goofy. They will read them. Okay? Put little screenshots in there. Create a little avatar that, has voice bubbles coming off of it saying, in order to properly set this up, you need an Apple ID or, you need or you need to click here and you need to do that, do that. I've been on college campuses and K-12 classrooms where you'll see faculty members with notebooks filled with those things when you use something like Comic Life to create it. It's very cool. One of the things that really makes this important is the ability to handle the downloads. Suppose you're doing a software update, or you're doing, the Java update. You're doing a Java update, right? And you got it going out to all your machines. Well, 80% of them are laptops. And somebody's got the update running, and they get up and they slap the lid closed on their laptop, and they throw it in their backpack, and they run down the hallway, and they head for another class. Well, the idea is the FileWave binary says, hey, I'm smart enough to know you stopped. And as soon as you start up again, I'm going to reactivate and continue the download and continue the operation. It's not just going to fail miserably. We won't mention anything like ARD or anything. Okay. And rollback. Anybody here ever deploy a piece of software and 10 minutes later go, oh crap? Okay, at least one person. Think about it. How many of you did the whole Office 2008 to 2010 thing? And then you found out that, oh, by the way, they changed the macros and they, there were a lot of people that run through that stuff. Just simple things, version changes or a new piece, a new version, a software update that goes out and boom, everything broke. Well, one of the things that we have the ability to do is flag the software so that you can roll it back. So what it can do is go out there and it basically disengages the old software, puts a new software in place, and if you change your mind, you can just click a button and change it and flip everything back to the way it was. That's kind of handy sometimes. Okay? So the idea here is, for instance, from an iOS point of view, you can deploy and say, hey, we bought a whole bunch of copies of Harry Potter for the entire, senior class to read for their critical American literature class, or critical English literature class. And so they're reading this stuff, or they're doing, the SAT stuff or whatever, and all the different world's greatest novels. That's actually a pretty good book. Pretty good set, because it's got Frankenstein and all the other really cool stories in there. But the idea here is you can make these where they're distributed and the user just gets it. If it's an App Store app for an iOS device, what they get is basically a link to the App Store. So they still have to do the whole, cannot violate Apple T&Cs, the terms and conditions. Cannot distribute software that belongs to the App Store. You can only link to it. Nobody can distribute it legally, right? But if you have institutional software, and that was something, we had it at Apple, and a lot of universities have that, where you roll your own iOS apps. And they're really cool apps. You got, different utilities and tools and stuff. You can just make those part of the self-service kit. And you can say, if you want it, here, it's right here. Just launch this icon, click on the icon, click on the tool, download it, use it, enjoy it. The other side is from the OS X point of view. This is actually where the tool was customized by the school. They put their logo in here, and here are all the different things that if you want, for instance, Evernote, you can just go ahead and click install, and it reaches out and grabs the file set with Evernote in it, and it just pops it onto your machine, and you've got it. And if the user is not the admin, you can bypass that. There's settings underneath that say ignore administrator privileges, right? And in other words, the binary is running at root level, so it just basically says, I don't care if it's Joey on this machine versus, Sam Smith, and I'll go ahead and put Evernote on here, and it'll be properly employed in the right place. It won't go to the user's home directory. It'll go into the real applications folder and so forth. And from a Windows perspective, you can do the same thing. You pick the applications that you want on there. VLC, one of the more important things for watching all those critical videos online. You can just go ahead and click on those. And if you have it installed, you can also uninstall. Anything you put on your machine that belongs to the institution, you go back and you say, hey, I don't need that. You can go ahead and dump it. That's actually a default where you can choose to have where it won't uninstall, but you go ahead and you install it, and if you say, hey, if you need this. But the idea is if it's a voluntary installation, then voluntary uninstallation needs to be there also, right? So you choose. That's your choice when you set this up. So the other side of software distribution is I'm going to make it happen, right? So here are a whole bunch of file sets of software, different file set groups of software that are going to go out. Calculator Pro, Automator, Configurator, all that other kind of stuff that has to go out onto a machine. Or from a Windows perspective, same thing. You send it out. And the other part of this is self-healing. Self-healing is kind of cool. Self-healing is that I sent you an app, and it includes all the help files, all the new font files. It includes all the other bits you need to run. And somebody goes in there and they read this article online that says how to clear disk space. Right? Not that anybody's ever done this. But then they go in and they run some utility they downloaded from the internet that says, oh, you have all these fonts you don't need. Or you have all these help files you don't need. And they just ditch that stuff. Well, the thing is, if you flag the file set to be self-healing, if the user does that, all they're going to do is have an exercise in futility, and they'll think they accomplished something because they'll throw this stuff away, and then FileWave will notify itself and immediately put all the stuff back so that the application runs correctly. Self-healing is very handy. Patching and upgrading, constant, right? I mean, keeping up with the software updates. One of the things, how many of you have actually done a log or a graph of software updates for Windows, OS 10, and iOS? I started doing that back in January just for grins, keeping track of all the software updates that showed up just every day, waiting for the flag to come up. You have software updates. On the Windows side and the OS 10 side, it was roughly equivalent. There were probably about 3 application updates a week, give or take. But on the iOS side, I was averaging 7 a day. I was like, holy cow. Either I have way too many applications, which is a distinct possibility. I mean, you can only limit yourself to just so many versions of Angry Birds and Tower Madness and all the other essential tools in life. How many of you have seen Flow? F-L-O-W? Do not go to the iTunes store. Do not look up Flow free. Do not download it. Because if you do, your life will be wasted for the next several days. Okay? I'm just telling you, don't do it. Yeah, there are those people that, the only way to get them to do something is that reverse psychology thing. The idea here is you use your asset management. You use the inventory tool to look up what the status of your systems are, what the status of your software is, what the status of everybody's updates are. You capture those updates automatically. I mean, we have the ability to just say, go and get all of the software updates that Apple has posted. Go and get all the software updates Microsoft has posted. Let's go ahead and have those available. And then you build a file set out of it. And how hard is this? Well, for instance, here's the guy who's running his Mac, and he hit a button and he said, go ahead and locate all of the Windows updates. Okay? So we got all the different, I noticed it was ironic that they were all security updates, but hey, that's a real screen, came up right there, and you can just create a file set of it. Say, I want a file set of this update. And then I can say, out of all the departments that need it, I am not going to hammer these guys during the day with this. What I'm going to do is create the file sets, and I'm going to stagger the deployment of this. This department's going to get it at 5 p.m., these guys at 7, these guys at 9, so I'm not, dumping it on everybody all at once. The same thing from the OS 10 point of view, okay? And we actually did this in the office just for grins, is having the Windows admin bring up the OS 10 updates, because you can. And you can create file sets from those. So here's the airport client update, the 27-inch iMac graphic firmware update, and so forth. So you get file sets that pop out for those. And you can create those, and then you can stagger the deployment of those. You can the activation time, you can set that for different groups. for different times so that you're not, just swarming everybody. And what you could do is you could say, this goes to this lab first, so we can go down there and do some QA on it just to make sure it doesn't break everything else on campus, which is really a good idea, by the way. Okay. For some of you that found out that when you deployed an update to 4,000 machines and found out it radically broke, like, I don't know, Photoshop or something, and or Office. Helpdesk management, you pull it all together and say, if I can get reports on what's going on, if I can find out when the machines in the shared lab are running out of disk space, if I can have somebody say, I'm having problems on my machine, and you can run a report and get all of the activity that they've been running in the applications, and you can see how much RAM they've got and what version of the operating system and what versions of the different apps, helpdesk management becomes much easier. Having the ability to reach out and get that, to be able to get alerts where you're running out of licenses, or you distributed a file set with an application and it failed. And, somebody calls and says, I didn't get such and such software. You said you were going to put it on my machine last night. And you get a report back that says, hey, I had a file set failure. It did not install. And you can troubleshoot that. That's something that makes the help desk operation significantly easier. Being able to remove profiles from systems. Somebody says, hey, I need to get, I've got a profile on my machine, but it seems to be interfering with everything I'm doing. It doesn't let me get to certain websites or whatever. And you can go and check on that. So from a help desk management point of view, being able to look at everything and say, hey, where are you? What are you doing? And one of the things I like this is we look at all the devices. This is a worldwide look. That's one of the advantages of having that booster technology is, for instance, at FileWave, we've got boosters running around the world for some of the companies that we're working at where you can basically track everything that's out there. Okay? Same thing from the being able to, this is basically the same kinds of information, CPU speed, device manufacturers, what version of, I can't even read that, how much RAM the machine has. They're looking at, MAC addresses, looking at how many hard drives are installed, so forth and so on. All that kind of stuff, what printers are attached to this device. Basically, if it's a piece of information you need, you can have a report on that and you can get it immediately. That does help keeping track of stuff and being able to manage your assets. Okay? So realistically, we play a pretty strong role from a systems management point of view. Cross-platform, hit the tasks, hit them hard, be able to give you guys the flexibility to do all the stuff you need to do so that, people aren't looking at the IT guys and saying, oh man, you guys are so annoying, you can't get anything done. Don't you hate it when they say that? So for more information on this, go to filewave.com. You can sign up for an Alliance account, which basically lets you get into the bowels of everything in there. And if you guys want to get time with one of our engineers and spend some time getting a WebEx type demo and go through the software piece by piece, we can arrange that for you. Just talk to Dave here. He's got some sign-up cards and stuff to let you guys take a look at that. And now we'll handle the Q&A, and I threw this up here only because it was so fitting. Questions? Answers? Sure. Yeah, think of it as acting just like the software update server, where you have the ability to turn on and turn off which updates are available. And when you activate the update, I know a lot of people have said, one of the things you could have is you could have a profile that just tells the client to automatically download all the updates and they just get applied, right? And on OS 10, that's an easy thing to do. On iOS, that's actually something in the works that, you'll probably see with iOS 7. I don't know. I'm out of the loop right now, so I don't know what's going on there. But essentially, we cache the updates so that you can then test them yourself and then apply them. You can activate them as you see necessary, and it's a pretty simple, straightforward process. And like I said, if it's a large campus or it's one of those things like the University of Phoenix where they got buildings all over the country. You put a booster out in each site, and then all those file sets are going to get cached down at their local location. As soon as you've activated it, it's ready to go. You will see all the updates that are available. You will create file sets for only the updates that you want to go out, and you will only associate those file sets with the devices you want to get those. So you actually have a couple layers of gates in between it happening so that you don't accidentally open the floodgates and everything just flows to the client. Okay? And so you have complete control over what flows downhill. VNC viewer? No, we don't have a VNC viewer built in. We just recommend using any of anything else. And we're exploring that as one of our things. But right now there are so many other viewers out there, and because of the cross-platform look at it, there's so many tools out there to be able to do that. To have one built in, it's on our list of to-dos, but we were working on infrastructure first.
Kind of an answer to that question. Our central Mac manager in the base image has ARD active and a local admin account that you can go and promote things through ARD. But because our users are admins, they have to delete it off and delete the local admin office. He has a FileWave. We use FileWave pretty heavily, and he has a file set that turns back on that local admin and re-enables the ARD settings. So if somebody goes in and screws with it, you can roll it back, fix it. And I think you might actually have that on SelfHealing. So,
yeah, if you put that on, you put something like that on SelfHealing where you have SSH active and you have remote access active, then you can just have it turned on and turned off. And then the same thing for the other platforms. If you want to have a VNC active on the Windows machine, you want a VNC server running, you just make it a file set and you just send it to it. And you've just got, boom, you got a file set active running on the machine. If somebody goes in and turns off the VNC or tries to remove the app, it just mysteriously reappears. So that's, versus us coming up with a unique tool for that. Universally, you think about it, it's, right now everybody's basically headed for the lowest common denominator on that. You want to have the simplest tool to be able to chat back and forth. Who knows? You may decide you want to create Skype accounts for the guys and just have them do it with Skype. Right?
Similarities to, it looks like you guys have some account, like Redmine and Puppet here.
Yep. Realistically, I haven't used Radmind in over a decade. And Puppet I've played with, so I really couldn't do a direct comparison between the two. I just know that when you look at, I did a systems management evaluation at Apple and looked at all the different companies, everybody, Altiris, Landesk, everybody else, and I looked at all the stuff, and and Jamf and Absolute. And when you look at it with what FileWave does at the file set level, it is a significantly smaller amount of traffic to move a chunk of data around. Instead of having to do the packaging and stuff, you guys know that Apple's discontinuing Package Maker, for instance, because they said, we want people to use the answer was, we want you to use command line to create packages. And I thought, well, that makes it really user friendly. But, I think actually what's happening is it's being built into Automator, the Automator actions for that. But if you think about packages, there's a lot of junk that gets wrapped around a package. Whereas if you say, if I got the permissions right, and the attributes for the application and everything, the permissions and attributes are okay, then just send that. And it's just an easier way to get things done. And as long as you can keep it all intact and you can keep it right, which we do, then you don't have to worry about the extra steps of making a DMG or making a package or, rolling it together into some custom cluster group or something. You got clients, you got file sets, you just associate the guys together and then it just happens. And you can throw in, if you want to throw in an MSI, if you want to throw in a PKG, doesn't make any difference. It'll eat those up just as well. It knows what to do with those. The difference is that you could send out an application package and you could send out the application. The application will get installed exactly where it belongs. The PKG will get to the client and run in the background to do the installation of whatever the PKG requires. And in some cases, you may need to do that. Sometimes it's just easier just to drag a package in there.
I think one of the differences that I've noticed, I haven't really put with Puppet, but I know Monkey is all timeline based, and this has a really expensive tool for the admin side, and I know I prefer that.
Yeah, I found, how many of you can touch type really fast? Okay, keep your hand up if you're a terminal junkie. Yeah, I found that people that can touch type love terminal, and command line to them means nothing because they just sit there and they just do this. You ever see Steve Heyman do his thing from Apple? He's just nuts. The guy types at 12,000 words a minute, and he just sits there and he just whips, pages of text on the screen, and he loves terminal. Me? I think I took shop instead. I can't remember back that far. That was many, many decades ago. But I hate typing. And I have to sit there and... I use backspace a lot. So, I prefer, click, drag, check, hit return. Or in some cases, I don't even hit return. I click, go. I'm a big fan of that. I mean, my ultimate goal in life is to have the Star Trek experience where I can just walk into a room and tell the computer what to do, and it materializes whatever I need, and it's done. We're not there yet. We're working on it. The world will get there. So, anything else? Yeah.
Can you just give a quick overview of pricing?
That's Dave's job. See, I avoid that.
Yeah, pricing, I'd be happy to talk to you about pricing. Pricing really, we're very competitive compared to the people out there, so, but it really very fine market, so I don't want to just talk about it here. No. But I do have to talk to you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
I started using Latest, and it has some issues with some third-party packages I've thrown in, specifically Flash and SilverLake. You go through the whole process, it's 30 something minutes to go through what kind of follows with this choice. There's some way to scan the packages before you have to go through the entire process to see which things have. So that's probably about 30, and probably have to maybe 20 to 80 people. So the entire day to go through and figure out which one you put in.
I can, if I can get your, I'll give you my email, you can do that, and I can go to the engineering groups that,
Yeah, that would, the engineering team would be really interested in knowing what things choked. That would be good. I haven't, and it's probably my Apple legacy in the fact that installing Flash is something where when I go to do it, I have this pre-programmed thing where my hand won't hit the return key because Steve said so.
Write your article.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that would be really, we can get you in touch with the engineering support guy and find out exactly what's going on there. It would help us because then we can make sure everybody else learns about it too. So, well, cool. Got 6 minutes left. I love the idea of being done early. Is everybody going to benefit from this, or can we just turn them all loose?
No, I just
Okay, well, why don't we just do them after I release everybody. So, hey guys, don't forget to fill out your eval. And thanks for coming in. If you got any pricing questions, if you want to talk about setting up a one-to-one with you and one of our systems engineers so that they can take you through a really, really cool, face-to-face demo with this, talk to Dave about it. He's got the cards out at the table so that you can do this. And thanks.